Hey, hey, welcome back to Cream City Dreams. It's the podcast where I interview incredible Milwaukee women who are doing wonderful things for the people in our community. On this show, I interview all kinds of women who are working with all kinds of people, and this is a new one for Cream City Dreams. Today on the show, I am bringing Eva Welch to the conversation. Eva is one of the founders of Street Angels. And if you've been living in Milwaukee for any amount of time, at least in the last 10 years, hopefully you will have heard of the work that they do with our neighbors without homes. And I don't know about you, but this winter has been cold, and I have been grateful to step into my warm house at the end of every day and my warm bed. And that's not the case for everyone in Milwaukee. But thankfully, there are organizations like Street Angels who are out there night after night, week after week, month after month, helping these friends and providing hope, and perhaps most importantly, dignity. All right, button up because this is a good one. Eva Welch. Today on the podcast, I am thrilled to welcome Eva Welch. Eva, along with her colleague and friend Shelly Saracen, is one of the founders and hearts behind Milwaukee's own Street Angels. And Street Angels is a mobile outreach organization and nonprofit dedicated to helping individuals end homelessness by providing services, advocacy, and connections to critical resources, all with dignity and, my favorite word of all, hope. And as we're recording this episode, we have just had some of the coldest days in a long while, with some below zero temps and wind chills. And it certainly got me walking in the house every time we walked in saying, I am so grateful for this warm house that I have. And it really got me thinking about how important this work is that you and Shelly and your team at Street Angels do for the people that you serve. So thank you for being here to tell this story.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, well, and before we dive into the story and the background and sort of how you got into this and what you do, because this is a podcast about women, but before we even start, I really want to get the nomenclature right, because words matter and language matters, and then how we tell narratives and the choices we make and the words we choose matter. And so I noticed on the website, instead of homeless, you say our neighbors without homes. And instead of homeless people, you call them friends. And I love that. And I just wanted to give you just a minute to sort of tell us about that and the words the choices that you're making there.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. Language is really, really important. And this Street Angels is very, very organic, and that's what it started as. It started as us assisting our friends that we met while we were volunteering.
Mm,
And being having a psychology background, knowing that the language I use is also going to matter how other people perceive our friends.
hmm.
Yeah, we never refer to them as clients or homeless people. They're our friends, and they're people who are experiencing homelessness.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that just emphasizes the word in your mission, which is dignity, right? Like that is so, I love that. So, well, please correct me if I get it wrong as we're talking today, because I think it's important to continue to remind each other of getting it right and to be corrected. Um, but I do want to jump into the story. So I know you've been around since 2016. I wonder if you can sort of take me back to how it began, the origins. Was it a one-off thing that turned into a passion project that turned into a nonprofit? Like, tell us the story.
Again, very, very organic. Shelly and I kind of have different stories of what led us to meet in the middle. For me personally, like I've always wanted to help people. I've always been a helper. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, never really knew what I wanted to do, just knew I wanted to help people.
Mm.
And one year, instead of asking my friends and family to support a family in need at Christmas, which I usually did every year, I seen it actually started with a Facebook post where I seen how important socks were for people who were experiencing homelessness. So I thought, you know what, this year I'm going to do a sock drive, and
Mm.
friends and family to donate socks. And I ended up with a lot of socks and found some women that were doing very, very grassroots work by assisting a small group of individuals who were experiencing homelessness in my own neighborhood.
Mm.
And yeah, just, starting that work. Sometimes I sit back and I'm like, I don't know what happened. That it really feels like the work kind of fell into my lap.
Mm.
Couple months after providing outreach services and cooking meals for people in my kitchen, I really wanted to experience it, so I knew what it was like and how we could better serve people and how we could better assist people. So I spent 48 hours in an encampment with some folks that we were serving.
Mm.
It just really changed my life to experience that and know the difference of bringing them a meal really meant we were providing them with their entire day to do whatever they needed to do because they knew that we were going to be there to provide food. So they
Mm.
didn't walk the 6 miles that we walked to the meal site and the 6 miles back. Literally, in that 48 hours, almost our entire time was focused on what we were going to eat.
Mm.
That was very, very impactful for me.
Yeah.
At 48 hours, instead of going home to rest, um, myself and another volunteer that was on the 48-hour adventure with me, we went home and started calling churches, literally opening a phone book and Googling local churches and calling them and saying, do you have space available where you could provide emergency shelter for somebody who's experiencing homelessness? At that time, there were only a few warming shelters in Milwaukee, and they only opened when temperatures were 10 degrees or below.
Whoa.
And
Wow.
we actually found a local church, a Central Lutheran church, said yes. It kind of shocked us. And that winter, we were providing shelter for anywhere from 80 to 100 people a night on the gym floor. And to know that, just providing my time and friendship was literally saving lives and changing lives,
Yeah.
it made it pretty motivating.
Yeah.
Warming room where Shelly and I met and thought, we could do more.
Yeah. Wow. So at this warming house at the Lutheran Ascension, did they provide all the, I don't know, sleeping bags or mats, or did you have to get all that donated way back then?
Yeah, so we went to the community. At that point, we had a small Facebook group that we started of people that wanted to assist and provide things. And, we would have a cooler on my porch, and we'd put out a post saying, "Hey, we want to make spaghetti," and hamburger would show up on my porch when I would come home from work. But we put out a plea to the community, and the church filled with blankets and food and coffee and volunteers. And we've done warming rooms 3 different years, but our main focus has always been folks that are unsheltered and outside, whether that be during winter, summer, spring, or fall. So
Yeah. Wow. And so back then, you're doing this all on a volunteer basis at that point. Because you're working elsewhere.
yeah, Street Angels was for the first 5 years, 4 or 5 years was 100% volunteer based. And it just kept growing and growing to the point where it was like, okay, something has to give. We have to figure out a way to quit our jobs,
Yeah.
really give Street Angels the focus that it needs. Um,
Yeah.
I wrote a grant to the Bader Foundation, who provided funding for a certain amount of months for us to figure out other funding to hire Shelly and I as the executive co-directors. So
Wow.
we're kind of coming up to that 10-year mark where 5 years was 100% volunteer based. In the last 5 years, it's been paid.
Yeah. I don't know how you could manage a paid job and this with the work that you do and the shifts that are overnight. And I mean, this is when you're out and about. So wow, wow. Do you
After
remember, was there a moment when you and Shelley kind of looked at each other and said, all right, let's do that. Like, let's really, because not like it's no joke starting a nonprofit, right? You got to get a board, like you said, funding, grants, all the things.
well, again, it started as we didn't want to start a nonprofit. We
Mm.
started because we wanted to help people and we wanted to make sure that the people in our neighborhoods were not suffering from hunger or cold. So it didn't really start as a nonprofit, right? It started as us helping people, and it grew into a nonprofit.
Yeah, yeah. I love these stories of the organizations that start so organically because I think it's cool for people to hear that like you just said, like things don't necessarily start because you have this aim of a nonprofit. You start with this small, well, not small, but you start with this nugget of an idea that you want to help people. I'm thinking of I had Megan Johnson from Milwaukee Diaper Mission. I don't know if you guys interact with them much, but like it started in her garage because Milwaukee didn't have one, and now it's like this huge organization that, unless you live under a rock, you've heard of, in Milwaukee, which is just so beautiful to see. I think people think that it's impossible to start things because they think of the end, they think of the big end result, right? But not realizing that it just takes that one step at the beginning to say, hey, I need hamburger meat. you know
Exactly. Right.
yeah, I love that. I love that. On your website it says, to sustainably solve a problem, we must first understand it. And I wonder, for those listeners who might not be familiar with homelessness in Milwaukee, can you give us some stats? Can you give us the facts? What's happening out there?
So I think the first and biggest misconception, which I had coming into this, which blew my mind to find out that there is not actually any shelter space in Milwaukee where an individual can just walk into to seek shelter and safety. That there's a process that an individual has to go through. You have to call 211, and getting into a shelter 9 times out of 10, you're going to call 211 and they're going to tell you there's no space available.
Whoa.
And I think that was a huge thing that, connected Shelly and I and the other folks that were assisting when we started this organization. It was mind blowing to realize that there were really people sleeping underneath the bridges that we drove over every single day. Not only
Yeah.
sleeping under those bridges, but there's literally nowhere for them to go.
Wow.
So we have winter warming rooms open that are at capacity with, I believe, around 300 people. Plus, we delivered 55 meals to 2 different hotels that are hosting families right now. So all of these spaces are made available as temporary emergency only because the shelter system doesn't have the capacity.
Wow.
So the reason Street Angels exists was that realization that there is nowhere for people to go. The very least we can do is provide them a blanket and a meal and maybe a hygiene bag so they can, take care of themselves.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest, misconception that people have. We do provide education and awareness presentations, just for these reasons, like just so people understand what it's really like.
Yeah.
Often hear people say, they don't want to follow the rules. For some, maybe that's the case, but for the majority, there is no shelter space available.
Wow. Wow. So Milwaukee has, you said we have 300 beds available in warming shelters?
That's just the emergency warming shelters. I could be off a little, but I believe it's somewhere between 250 to 300, and
Okay.
that's not enough.
Yeah.
We have served people outside of the warming shelters who were turned away on nights because they were full. Now, granted, they're doing whatever they can and going over capacity during this polar vortex right now. They were
Mm-hmm.
making sure that if you showed up, you got a space.
Yeah.
Um, but we every year we never have enough capacity for warming, much less regular shelter space.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So you talked a little bit about what you do, but can you expand on give us a typical week in the life at Street Angels?
Sure. So right now, our team of staff and volunteers are boots on the ground in the community 5 days a week. Recently, in July, we launched a shower trailer program,
Mm.
Hours of Hope. So we have that out 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We partnered with Kohler and Milwaukee Bucks Foundation, very state of the art, 3 unit, fully ADA compliant. So 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we are out with the shower trailer. It does not operate when temperatures are below 32 degrees.
Mm.
Team is still going to the locations to make sure that people are provided winter gear and bag lunches and whatever they need if they're there to meet us. And then every Tuesday and Thursday, we're providing the nighttime outreach. So the nighttime outreach starts at about 6 p.m. The reason that we intentionally start at that time is because that's typically the time where, if you were able to secure shelter space, that's the time you have to go back to the shelter.
Okay.
Our route is at nighttime, focusing on folks that are unsheltered, living outside. We have 2 different routes, so 2 different buses. One bus is covering kind of the northern part of the county, and one bus is covering the southern part of Milwaukee County. Right now, the buses are out for an average of 25 to 30 hours a week, and that increase to 30 to 40 hours a week come summertime.
Okay.
On the buses, you will find hot meals for the moment. So we have cooler bags and individually packaged meals that we're providing to folks, and then we'll also give them a bag lunch for later.
Okay.
So the interaction with the outreach, we're providing 2 meals. And then we have the bottled water and the clothing and blankets and sleeping bags and gloves and hats and hand warmers. During the summer, we'll have bug spray and sunscreen and anything that you can think of that you might need to take camping or survive outside, you'll find on our buses. The flashlights. In partnership with several other community organizations, we also provide harm reduction kits. So we're making sure that people have what they need to basically survive while they're outside. In the meantime, the long-term goal is to make the connection with people, earn their trust. We want to see them every Tuesday and Thursday. We want to document that, and we want to advocate for them. A lot of the housing programs, especially the federal housing programs, you have to be documented homeless for a period of 12 months solid, or a 12-month period within 3 years, and have some kind of diagnosed disability, whether that be physical, mental, addiction, in order to qualify for federal housing. So our long-term goal is to make sure that we're staying connected to people and advocating to receive not only housing resources, but access to whether it be employment resources, healthcare, substance and mental health treatment. So we're kind of we look at ourselves as a support system, extension cord. So we're out seeking people out who need that assistance. We're partnering with the agencies that provide that assistance.
Yeah. So you have, I mean, so the idea then is that you have regulars. You want the regulars. You want the same people showing up so that you can be that documentation so that they can then take that to the federal government.
Absolutely. During summer months, this last summer, record numbers that we were seeing anywhere from 350 to 375 people each night. And I would say 80 to 90% of them, we know them. They connect with us every chance they get. So we have a documenting system where people can opt into it. If you walk up to us and you don't want to speak to me at all, we're still going to offer you a meal. You don't have to provide us any information. But if you opt into this advocacy system, we're sending your name, your location, any vulnerabilities you have. Are you interested in shelter? Are you interested in housing? We're sending this to Milwaukee County Housing and Impact 211 1 to 2 times a month. And then we're personally advocating for individuals who are extremely vulnerable. Right now, Street Angels has 25 people in hotel rooms because there isn't access for shelter.
Yeah.
A lot of those folks are families.
Wow. Wow. And so children, I imagine.
Yeah. Very rarely when we first started doing this work, did we come across children who were unsheltered. We would find folks in a car, but it was very rare. Now it's not as rare. It got to the point, unfortunately, where we have a family tracker in our system where we didn't before. And I believe it's 6 families right now that Street Angels is personally paying to be in a hotel during this cold snap until shelter is available.
Wow.
We were just very rarely finding families.
Yeah. So you have these 2 buses, one on the north side, one on the south side. How many staff are out? How many volunteers? How much room is there on this bus? How does that work?
So it's usually a minimum of 1 staff member, maybe 2, and then 1 to 3 volunteers on each bus.
Okay.
And then bus is making approximately right now about 30 different stops.
And seeing, like you said, 300 to 350 people a night.
Right now outside we're seeing about 150, but then we're also providing 150 meals to 2 different warming rooms every Tuesday and Thursday.
Okay. Wow. So in effect, do the volunteers, are they consistent so that there is that consistency for the friends that you serve?
Yeah, most of our volunteers have either been with us a really long time or they're scheduled every other Tuesday, every Thursday.
Yeah.
And then usually one night there'll be at least, 1 new face on the bus.
Yeah.
for a new volunteer joining us. Yeah.
So, do they consider themselves, or do you consider them almost like caseworkers a little bit in terms of the wraparound services you're hoping to provide for friends?
So we call our outreach staff and volunteers outreach specialists.
Yeah. And I'm curious about, you talked about one of the things that you try to do initially is build the trust so that they do come back and the friends do talk to you and share their stories. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I imagine for some that there is a stigma with homelessness. And how do you build that trust? What does that look like?
So everything we have on that bus, we have always considered tools.
Hmm.
And sometimes it looks like us getting cussed out the first time and not giving up. That happens often. But we understand the mistrust.
Hmm.
We understand the I don't want to hear it again. So many people have come down here and said they're going to help me, and nobody comes through. And we're always in the moment.
Hmm.
But I have a meal for right now, and I'd like
Right.
to come check on you again Thursday. So we look at those meals and the items that we have on the buses as tools. And I think eventually, with us not giving up, regardless of how they treated us, um,
Hmm.
we'll realize that, we're out there really just to help them. We don't
Yeah.
have a hidden agenda. We don't come out with a clipboard in your face immediately. We don't expect anything in return. And I think being so organic and having volunteers and knowing that everything that we provide came from the community is huge in itself.
Hmm.
The message that the community cares, whether it be a pair of socks or a hot meal or whatever it may be, somebody cared enough to make sure that street angels receive that to give to you.
Again, yeah, I love the use of the word tools. Like again, the this idea that words, how we talk about this matters for the dignity of the friends. I'm curious about, you talked at the very beginning, and I noticed on your website also you had your board members do this 48 hours of homelessness as a fundraiser. Um, and I guess I'm just curious about that experience. You said it totally changed your perspective. Like what did you find? What did the board members find? How did that shift perspectives, or what insights did you bring from that?
So, yeah, this is something that we've done almost every year since that first year that I experienced it because I felt like it was just such an impactful experience
Mm,
that we're coming out regularly should try at least 12 hours or 24 hours or the full 48. And every year we learn something different. One year I had a 5 pound 1970s sleeping bag that I had to carry around. And I ditched it within 2 or 3 hours because my sciatic nerve was acting up and we're walking around and like my fingers were starting to turn colors from this thing, and I left it on the bus stop because I'm like, I'd rather be cold. And we do this in October, November, so it's never like great weather. Um,
yeah.
but it was such a pain to carry that I ditched it within a few hours. And about a block away, like it dawned on me, like, well, this is why they always ask for blankets, And at that time, before we had the shower trailer, we were doing the nighttime outreach 3 nights a week.
Mm,
I recall myself saying to people, I just gave you a blanket on Tuesday. I don't know that we're going to be able to give you a blanket every single time. Well, I don't say that to people anymore.
mm,
It'd be you couldn't carry it, somebody threw it out, it got wet, it got ruined. I've now 10 years later, I've now experienced all of that.
yeah.
Understand why he may need a blanket every single time. And again, the learning of not having to spend my whole day focusing on how I'm going to eat one meal, knowing that we're going to be there to provide that is huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big things and little things.
Yeah. I had never, I can just imagine all the things that it's like, oh, yeah, of course, that would be really difficult. And I would have never, ever thought about that. That's so interesting. How do your board members appreciate that too?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's usually we ask our outreach staff and board members to try to participate.
Yeah. How cool to live that experience so that you can, I imagine that makes their passion for the fundraising and for all the things that they do even more fervent.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love too that you guys call yourselves hope dealers. That's I love that so much. And I'm wondering, like, where does that hope come from night after night? What keeps you going?
I think what keeps us going is the stories of seeing an individual 3 weeks later we haven't seen a while, and they show up and just to let us know that they have housing.
Mm.
Um, our most recent story is our team showed up to one of our regular stops, recognized the face, we knew who the gentleman was, haven't seen him in a while, and he said, I just wanted to stop by and say thank you guys, handed the driver a card in an envelope and walked away. And it was a handwritten message about how he hopes this helps. And from one of our former customers, and there was $49 in the card.
Oh,
So just to know how appreciated what seems like so simple, here's a meal and a pair of socks, but it's so much more than that. Um,
yeah.
and it's that message of saying we see you, we care for you, we're here for you. Yeah, I mean, it's it's pretty amazing to see someone you haven't seen in quite a while and for them to pretty much praise you saying, you helped save my life, and you're just like, wow, all I really did was bring you a lunch.
Yeah.
It's really motivating.
Yeah, just this reminder I mean, isn't that what we all just want is to be seen and to not be passed by and to have somebody make eye contact with us,
Yep.
show us that they care.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to ask you that next too, of what kind of stories do you see? What kinds of changes I'm guessing at this point you have some data that you've been tracking in terms of how many of the people that you help eventually do find shelter, permanent shelter in homes?
It can be hard for us to track.
Mm,
A lot of times, if we stop seeing somebody, our prayer is that means they may have
mm,
received their housing. But we're able to track when individuals are completely disconnected from. A lot of times we'll find people and they're already, in the 211 system or they have a case manager, but we're able to track individuals who have been completely disconnected that we were able to connect. And it's been well over 1,000 people that we've been able to connect to permanent housing resources solely because we sought them out.
mm. Oh, that's so cool. That in itself too must be just so soul satisfying, you know?
We've even hired a few people that we've served.
Yeah.
Hired one individual who was cooking for us for a while. He ended up getting a better full-time job. He's still connected with us. Right now, we have somebody working for us that we had served at a point in his life. Many of our folks will come and volunteer with us. It's really friendship. It
Mm,
almost all boils down to friendship. Many of them, we are their support system. So we'll pull up to an encampment and they're just so excited to see us because they have something to share that they know we're going to be proud.
mm.
And if they didn't have us, there's nobody else to share that with and nobody else to be proud. So
Yeah.
to know that, hey, I'm going to have somebody to be proud of me that I went and did what I was supposed to do.
Uh, I'm curious what you would like listeners to know about the people that you work with, about the friends that you work with, in terms of how they land in their situations, maybe misconceptions that people have about why people are unsheltered, how they get there. Because I think I talked about that stigma earlier. I think there is misconceptions that, well, your fault or you did and what are you seeing?
Yeah, there's lots of stigmas, and obviously the biggest one is addiction.
Mm,
People are very quick to say, well, they made the choice to do drugs, so this is what. But what really leads people to end up at this point is typically trauma, right? And there's actually research that suggests that there are more people who are homeless, who are addicted because they're homeless, not homeless because they're addicted.
mm,
So they're using it as a coping mechanism, right? They're using it
mm.
to self-medicate. They're using to fit in. And one thing leads to another. During that first 48-hour experience, again, that was in January. We've never done it in January. I don't drink much. I believe I have an allergy, so I get really bad hangovers, so I just don't drink much. But on our way back from that 6-mile walk in the rain, sleet, snow, I literally nudged the volunteer that was with me into the liquor store to buy us a half pint so we could take a couple shots to warm up, to fall asleep. And while we were in that tent and we took a couple shots, in my mind, it clicked that this is how it happens for some people.
Yeah.
Tonight, it'll be 4 shots. The next night, it'll be a pint. It'll escalate from there.
Mm,
But I think it's just really important for people to understand that Sometimes it's not so much a series of choices, but a series of trauma. And for many folks, they're living in survival mode, which is traumatizing. The shelter system can be traumatic. Living on the streets is traumatic. So for many folks, that prefrontal cortex is shut off,
Mm,
and they're not able to make decisions that they normally might make, nor are they able to focus on anything but surviving. Where am I going to eat? Where am I going to sleep? Where am I going to stay safe? Where can I stay warm? That's typically the capacity of what they have in a day.
yeah. Yeah. And so Street Angels just takes that burden off of at least some of those things.
We try. Yeah.
Yeah. In an ideal world, maybe if I was going to ask you what a better future would look like, it would be like I don't have a job because I'm not needed anymore. That might
Yes.
be an ideal world. In a maybe slightly more realistic world, what does a better future look like? What are you advocating for?
So, again, almost 10 years, we have seen no shelter space added.
Hmm.
We have seen in the last 2 years, the number of people connecting to our services has increased 115%.
Wow.
So we would love to see more adequate shelter space added. If that's not possible, we would love to see a place where people can simply exist without being criminalized. Uh,
Hmm.
we've had many people being evicted from camps this year, which does not help the situation. So
Yeah.
we would
Yeah.
definitely love for, people to just be able to exist.
Yeah. And how does that advocacy happen? Like, what would we write our representatives? Is it a matter of talking with the mayor? Who's making these decisions of more shelter?
I think it's definitely going to be, all of the shelters currently right now are in the city of Milwaukee.
Mm.
I often wonder, and I've actually asked this question and haven't gotten a solid answer yet, but what are the other municipalities putting in on?
Mm.
Because there are people who are homeless in West Dallas. There's people who are homeless in Wauwatosa, Oak Creek. We're going to all of these communities, so I know there's people who are homeless there. How do we collectively provide somewhere for people to seek shelter?
Mm.
I think that may look like, yeah, contacting our elected officials, and maybe it's asking them that same question. How do we ensure that there is somewhere that people can go and exist and be safe?
Mm-hmm. Because these are also their constituents, just as
Correct.
much as any
Right.
of us.
They're,
Yeah.
they're neighbors without homes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If people are listening to this and wanting to help or reach out or give, what are there items you're in need of most? Is it straight up money? What do Street Angels need?
So yeah, definitely items. Obviously money, right, keeps us going. We have an Amazon wish list on our website where items can be purchased and sent directly to us.
Okay.
That's consistently updated throughout the seasons. But over a third of our budget is in-kind contributions.
Mm,
The only thing that we request to be new is socks and underwear. Again, dignity.
yes.
Anything
Yep.
else, gently used clothing, blankets, we're always in need of,
Okay.
especially with the numbers growing the way they are. We are an organization that is still 100% community funded. So if you see we're doing a fundraiser, yeah, if you want to donate, that's fabulous. Typically, our needs are always listed on our website and updated as well.
Okay. Okay. So I will put links to all of that in the show notes, to your Amazon list, and to the donation page on your website for sure. Is there like a big annual event that you have, or what's your big fundraiser of the year?
So we have two annual fundraisers. One of them is tied to the 48 hours.
Mm.
So that just actually ended. But then in June, we will have it's called Singing in the Streets Karaoke for a Cause.
Okay. Oh, fun.
Take over the beer garden at Kegel's Inn in West Dallas.
Uh-huh.
Have an auction tied to that and lots of games and prizes in person. So
Awesome. I will be sure to share that when that comes out later this summer. That's so fun. That's awesome. Um, what's the favorite meal as you're out? What do your friends love most when they're like, oh yes, I don't know, is it Taco Tuesday night?
well, no, it used to be the burritos. We would call them the Babs, the big ass burritos. um, yeah, I'm not sure right now because right now it's very different. Last night we had macaroni and barbecue pulled pork, macaroni
Mm,
and so I have a feeling we're going to hear some great reviews on that one.
yep.
we have a rule about the things that we distribute, whether it be food or clothing, and that is if we wouldn't eat it or serve it to our family and friends, we don't serve it while we're on outreach as well. So the food is always great. It's usually what
Yes.
we're having for dinner too, and we'll share that with them. Like, it's what we had for dinner. They're like, "Are you serious?" So, but yeah, we have great food. We partner with a caterer. We provide him with all the food. He charges us a very minimal amount, and we tell him how many meals we need, which again, sometimes in the summer is upwards near 400, and he makes it happen. So,
Oh, okay. I was going to ask that whether you have a commercial kitchen yourselves, whether you're making this. So no, you give him the supply, like you would give him the beef and the,
yep.
lettuce, cheese, and he makes it.
Hunger Task Force provides us with probably about 30-40% of the raw ingredient, and we purchase the rest.
Okay.
So every time we pick up a meal, we're dropping off the ingredients for the next meal.
Wow.
And he'll
Okay.
bring it to us or we'll pick it up in the Cambros that keep it nice and hot. At our office, volunteers individually package it.
Okay. Okay. So that was going to be my next question. What are some things that if volunteers would like to with you or, actually come in and help, what kinds of jobs are there for people in the community?
So we have the meal packaging. We have volunteers come in and help us label donations and count donations.
Okay.
Different special projects. We have a Valentine event coming up that we're having people come in and make treat bags, and we'll do Easter bags, and then we also have the shower program, which people can come and that will be in the community while they're going through the shower program. We do have outreach volunteers, but that requires a training that typically only happens once a year.
Okay. Okay. So being on the bus at night would be the next level up, but people, if they wanted to, could maybe just come in and help roll some burritos.
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
Do you get groups coming in? Like I'm thinking of my daughter's Daisy troop. Could we
Yep,
come in and make some
yep,
sandwiches or?
yep. We have groups come in, classes come in. We have businesses come in with their different groups. Yeah,
Awesome. And as part of your outreach, do you go out and talk to groups as well? I'm thinking of, I have all these ideas, but now I'm thinking of like the adolescents at my other kids' classroom.
yeah. We have different education and awareness presentations. Um,
Okay.
presentations ranging from 5 minutes to you've got to pull us off the stage. So
Okay. Love it. Oh, I'm going to talk to the teachers because I think, yeah, they're very social justice oriented. So I think this would be a neat organization to pair with. And we worked last year, we did a food drive for Kinship Community Food Center in River West. So, yeah, do you have in your location, do you have a place to store if we did a peanut butter drive, say, or do you need things like that or?
uh, that we'll talk to Shelly about that. I would say no. We have a hard time doing food drives because we'll get random.
Yeah.
We could do something like random snacks because whenever lunches may not show up or we end up needing more than what we asked for from the community, we'll throw together snack bags.
Okay.
A lot of times classes will either have us come present or they'll put together some kind of blessing bag or snack bag. So it could also be hygiene kits that we use for showers. So
Okay, cool. All right. I'm thinking, yeah, I hope this plants some ideas in our listeners' minds of things that they could do in their community because I feel like right now a lot of people are turning locally. I think we're all in an exhaustion with what's happening nationally and a frustration and so many other words that I
yeah.
could use. But are thinking, okay, I might not be able to change the big things, but how can I center on what I can do and what's in my community and what's right on my doorstep? And so I think this is a great organization that if people are feeling like that and feeling like they want to step up and do something, that Street Angels would be a great organization to connect with. So,
And something super simple and very, very impactful, believe it or not, is coloring little coloring pages, writing inspirational notes that we
mm,
can stick in the bags. Oftentimes we'll have people tell us that's the first thing they look for. We've provided bags of Christmas gifts, and the only response we get on them is this card made me cry. Um,
oh,
or if you do lunches, coloring on the lunch bags, like it really means a lot to the folks.
oh, that's so cool. That is so cool. I'm so grateful for this work. Well, this is a podcast about women and women who dream. And I always ask at the end of each episode Who is a woman in Milwaukee who inspires you? Who is somebody that you look to as an inspiration?
Definitely hands down, I would have to say our board president, Jan Wilbert,
Mm.
currently the commissioner and chair of the Commission of Aging in Milwaukee. And she's just a huge inspiration and mentor. She taught me how to write my first grant. And yeah, she's definitely somebody that I look up to and hope I can be with.
Oh, I'll have to reach out to Jan. The more I do this, the more I realize how important mentors are for all of us in Milwaukee. And Milwaukee is full of strong women and strong mentors, including you. So thank you so much for joining me and for the work that you're doing so that all of us in this community can live with dignity and hope and warmth and love. I think Milwaukee is a better community with people like you and organizations like Street Angels. So thank you.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. You know, what I love most about this podcast and doing this podcast is that I get to meet these incredible women who inspire me to get out into the community and who inspire me to think about how simple it could be to make a difference. I can organize a sock drive. I can write some handwritten cards that would make people feel seen and respected and loved. I can sign up for a couple hours in a week to roll some burritos so that people have a warm meal. And listener, I bet you could find that time too. Am I right? I mean, really, think about your own week. Do you have an hour or two? Maybe you don't, actually. Maybe there are people out there for whom time would be difficult, but I've got a bunch of extra blankets in the closet that I'm not using, or these extra boots that have been sitting in my basement for years. Or you know what? I could just get out a checkbook and write a check. So lots of ways to be a part of the work of Street Angels. So I hope this interview has inspired you to, whether it's time or whether it's money or whether it's in-kind donations, hope this has inspired you to think about what you can give. This conversation also just reminds me of the importance of dignity with what we do and how we give. I'm reminded of it in the stories of Hunger Task Force with the kinds of foods and the intention with which they grow the food, the delicious food that people want. The way Sarah, the head farmer out there, asks her community what they would like and then grows that specific crop. I'm reminded of Caitlin Cullen over at Kinship Community Food Center and how when you walk into that place, you don't know who's a volunteer and who is in need because everybody wears name tags. Everybody is welcome. Everybody is treated like an equal. Again, dignity. I'm also thinking of Megan Johnson, who started Milwaukee Diaper Mission and who, in addition to the diaper portion of what they do, also has a period poverty program because 1 in 3 low-income people have reported missing work or school or some kind of event because they don't have access to period supplies. And heads up, periods come no matter what your income for at least half the population once a month. So her work there is essential to the functioning of women. And again, providing it with dignity is so important to them. I'm reminded of the work of Boyana and her work with refugees, maybe now more than ever, and helping them to feel welcome, to feel a sense of community, to feel like they belong somewhere. Again, dignity, dignity, dignity. I love that so many of the women that I talk to have an emphasis on treating people with respect and kindness and honoring them by seeing them, by validating them. And boy, I think we're going to have a lot of work in these next 4 years to continue doing that. And I think it's going to be down to us all doing it locally and us all coming out of our own bubbles and our own silos and our own side of Milwaukee or our own neighborhood in Milwaukee and doing what we can for everyone so that everyone gets to live and survive and thrive with dignity and love and warmth and a sense of community. So Hopefully this episode inspired you. I will put links to how you can contribute. There's a Sign Up Genius on their website for volunteer shifts, as well as their Amazon wish list of what they need the most at any given time. So whether you're listening to this episode on the day it drops or months or years later, the need is still there. Tune in next week when I will be back with another Milwaukee woman living her dream in the Cream City. Until then, Milwaukee, keep on dreaming.